The ocean did not ripple. The water stood frozen like a heavy mirror reflecting a pale sky as the keel of the approaching vessel slipped into the narrow wake behind the drifting hull. No swell broke against the timber. No propeller hum disturbed the quiet. Only the low groan of taut rigging cut through dead silence. The deck gleamed with a wet sheen, untouched by rain or spray. Morning dew lay in an unbroken sheet, undisturbed by boots. The air felt unnaturally thick, saturated with a weight that pressed against eardrums and shortened every breath. The first step onto the planks returned a muffled echo, instantly swallowed by the dense atmosphere. No voice answered. No shadow leaned from the companionways. Only steam. A thin ribbon rose straight upward, refusing to drift even an inch. On the oak table in the captain's quarters sat a ceramic mug. Dark liquid rested inside, releasing a faint scent of roasted beans and bitter bark. The warmth did not come from a stove or embers, but seemed to radiate directly from the vessel itself. Beside it lay a plate of neatly sliced ham, a bread crust still pliant, a knife resting on linen without a scratch. The chairs stood exactly where occupants must have pushed them back, yet their legs left no mark on the floorboards. Wind from the open sea did not reach past the bulkheads. Curtains hung motionless. Dust refused to dance in the dawn light. Everything was arranged with terrifying precision, like a stage set frozen the instant before the curtain fell. A few dark stains on the pine deckboards fractured the scene. They began at the base of the mainmast, stretched in a steady line toward the stern, then stopped abruptly, without a smear or trace of haste. The blood was not wiped, not diluted by seawater, not thinned by time. It simply ceased, as though it struck an invisible barrier. 2 lifeboats were missing, yet their davits remained locked in position, chains uncut, pulleys unturned, ropes unworn against metal. No crewman had lowered the boats. No sailor had leapt overboard. The absence of the crew left no panic, only the heavy sensation of an unfinished act suspended in its final second before vanishing. The adjoining cabins held the same impossible order. Logbooks lay open across tables, pages untroubled by drafts, ink unblurred. A pen rested in a copper well, its nib still wet, as though it had touched paper only a moment before. A wall calendar marked the 19th day of the 11th month, yet the numerals showed no fading or wear. The year 1872 hung in the stagnant air, soaking every scene with the scent of fresh brew, salt, and something faintly sweet like dried petals. Time did not move forward. It had solidified into a shape visible only to the eye and touch. Every step along the ladder grew heavier on the lungs, every brush against the rail sent a faint tremor through the fingers. Planks did not creak. Iron did not bend. Lines did not whisper. The ship did not drift upon the swell but held its position at a coordinate where charts surrendered meaning. Steam above the mug rose in a perfect column, never leaning, as though the air inside obeyed different laws. Bodies were absent. Flight was absent. Reason was absent. Only the table remained, the cup, and a severed trail of dark fluid vanishing into space. And the certainty that someone had just stepped through the doorway, leaving everything untouched, so the next to cross would become part of the silence. The holds greeted the investigators with heavy, stale air thick with the scent of tarred timber and aged cordage. Casks of vegetable oil stood in tight rows, bound by ropes untouched by rust. Sacks of wheat and rye lay in even stacks, their fabric retaining its tautness without shedding a single grain. Crates of textiles bound for overseas markets were arranged with mathematical precision, lids fitted perfectly, seals unbroken. Not a single shift, not a scratch, not a trace of hurried unloading or hidden panic. The cargo rested as though the ship lay in dry dock rather than on the open sea. The captain's cabin maintained flawless order. Papers rested in neat stacks, tied with maritime knots, dates matching port customs stamps. The route followed standard trade lanes, with no deviations, no secret destinations. Watch schedules were marked to the minute, signatures of the first mate and bosun standing side by side, ink neither smeared nor faded. Navigation instruments on the bridge displayed coordinates with unsettling clarity. Chronometers ticked in unison, sextants lay in their cases, glass free of condensation. Everything spoke of routine passage, entirely devoid of emergency. Yet the dark marks on the deck refused to fit the logical picture. They began at the base of the companionway stairs, where wood always darkens from damp and salt, and stretched toward the stern in a straight, almost geometric line. Each step appeared measured, without wide strides or jagged marks suggesting stumbling or struggle. The line ended abruptly, as though an invisible boundary had sliced through space. The air above that spot felt denser, colder, yet carried no scent of iron or decay. The blood simply ceased to exist, leaving behind not a drop, not a smear, not a shadow. The temperature inside the ceramic vessels defied the laws of physics. Cold ocean wind struck the hull, tearing foam from wave crests, slipping through cracks in the planking, yet steam above the mugs rose perfectly straight, unwavering. Touching the porcelain brought neither heat nor cold. The liquid within retained its original thickness, neither evaporating nor shifting in shade. As though time inside those cups had been sealed off, separated from the outside world by an invisible membrane. Attempts to cover them with lids or move them into enclosed rooms yielded nothing. The warmth did not come from the drink, but from the space surrounding it. After 2 days of examination, it became clear, the absence of the crew was not the result of disaster or mutiny. There were no signs of rebellion, no broken furniture, no torn papers, no marks of desperate resistance. Weapons remained in their holsters, powder magazines locked, keys hanging on hooks. People had not fled. People had not died. They had simply ceased to exist within sight, leaving behind a flawlessly preserved environment, ready to resume at any moment. The ship was not wrecking. It was holding its breath. The air within the bulkheads thickened with each passing hour, taking on a palpable viscosity. Breathing grew heavier, not from lack of oxygen, but from mounting pressure against the chest. The sun slowly sank toward sunset, painting the sky in crimson and leaden tones, yet dusk never fell inside the vessel. Light struck at the same angles, shadows refused to lengthen, dust motes hung suspended, refusing to settle. Steam above the drinks did not fade, did not dissipate, did not turn to condensation. It continued to rise, thin, vertical, unchanging, as though time had frozen within the hull. Investigators recorded every detail, yet entries in the logs lost all meaning. Numbers failed to form an explanation, blueprints offered no answers, measurements revealed the same unchanging scene. The deck did not sway beneath their boots, though waves beyond the hull continued to strike the keel. The sound of water was muffled by wooden planking, reduced to a steady, monotonous hum. No creaking, no knocking, no rustle of rats in the hold. Living things had vanished along with the crew, or perhaps never existed at all. The space within the hull operated on its own rhythm, entirely out of sync with the world outside. Navigational logs confirmed the course, yet depths beneath the keel defied the charts. The sounder showed a flat seabed, though nearby trenches plunged thousands of fathoms into the dark. The compass did not tremble, its needle pointing true north, yet the sun rose and set at angles no calculation predicted. The ship sailed by its own rules, ignoring magnetic anomalies, tides, and winds. It did not resist the elements. It absorbed them, translating their motion into stillness. Every mast, every block, every inch of rope worked to preserve the moment. The evening of the third day brought no relief. Shadows gathered along the bulkheads but failed to swallow the light. Lanterns in the cabins burned with the same steady flame, wicks unblackened, oil undiminished. The warm drink in the mugs remained the only living element in a frozen world. Its scent did not dissipate, did not blend with tar and aged timber. It stayed isolated, pure, deliberate. As though left not to quench thirst, but as a beacon, an invitation, a marker for those who would come later. Investigators felt time inside the hull begin to stretch, losing its linearity. Seconds seemed longer than hours, hours passed in a blink, yet the state of the environment shifted not a fraction. Dust did not settle. Steam did not fade. Blood on the deck did not darken. Everything remained in perfect equilibrium, sustained by an unseen force. The sensation of being watched grew stronger, though nothing visible offered a focal point. The emptiness was not an absence, but a presence of another order. It demanded no explanation. It demanded acceptance. Sunset dissolved into a gray veil, yet night never fell inside the ship. The light remained unchanged, cold, lifeless, but unyielding. Mugs stood on tables, ham did not dry out, bread did not crust. The trail on the deck was not scuffed by footsteps, did not dry, did not soak into the wood. It simply existed, a boundary between what had been and what was meant to occur. The investigators understood their presence did not disrupt the order. It completed it. Every breath, every turn of the head, every step on the companionway became part of a mechanism long set in motion and unaware of stopping. 2 days collapsed into a single instant, stretched to the limit of endurance. Fear gave way to a dull understanding that logic was powerless against whatever held warmth in porcelain and preserved steam above liquid. The ship had not been abandoned in panic. It had been left with the expectation of return. But whose return? The crew that vanished, or those who came to examine the void? There was no answer. Only the realization that time within the hull did not flow, but pulsed. And that pulse was synchronized not with a heart, not with clocks, but with something far older, waiting for its moment in absolute silence. Chapter 3. Morning arrived without familiar sounds. No gulls cried, no waves struck the hull, no rigging creaked. The air remained motionless, saturated with the scent of salt and that peculiar sweetness that had lingered since the first step onto the deck. Light fell evenly across the planks, casting no long shadows, as though the sun had frozen at its zenith. Silence pressed against the temples, turning every breath into a conscious act. Where the dark drops had abruptly ended, a faint coating now emerged. It resembled fine-grained ash, yet did not stain gloves, left no marks on skin, and emitted no smell of burning or dampness. It could be gathered between fingers, but scattered into invisible particles, dissolving into the air before touching any surface. This powder did not react to touch, did not change color under light, did not absorb moisture. It simply lay there, a reminder of a completed process whose nature remained hidden from sight. The temperature recording instrument sat on the edge of the table, its glass flask reflecting the pale light. The needle had frozen on a single mark and refused to budge, though hours passed into hours. Outside the hull, the mercury dropped, the wind drove icy dampness through cracks in the planking, yet inside the vessel the readings remained unchanged. The mechanism was not broken, the springs worked, the scale was properly marked. The anomaly did not belong to the instrument. It belonged to the space where heat did not dissipate but concentrated, forming an invisible dome around the furniture. Attempts to move the device or cover it with cloth yielded nothing. The reading stayed the same, as though physics had surrendered its authority here. The liquid inside the flask stood still, waiting for a command that would never come. The ceramic mugs continued to hold the remnants of the drink, the surface of the liquid remaining perfectly smooth. No film, no sediment, no sign of oxidation. The bread on the plate showed no crust, the crumb retained its original porosity, as if freshly pulled from an oven. Water pitchers stood beside decanters, the glass unclouded, the liquid within neither losing clarity nor acquiring a stale taste. Food and drink did not spoil, did not dry out, did not react with the surrounding environment. They existed in a state of perfect equilibrium, preserved by an unseen force. Every object seemed removed from the stream of decay, placed inside a sealed vessel where seconds carried no change. The food did not invite hunger. It served as undeniable proof of the impossible. Things did not age. They waited. Those who crossed the cabin threshold felt a growing physical tension. Pressure in the ears mounted with each passing minute, akin to descending to great depth, though the altitude above sea level remained unchanged. Fingers began to tremble, hand muscles tensed involuntarily, as if the body were bracing for an invisible strike. The mind demanded retreat, instinct screamed to abandon the ship immediately, to find fresh air, to regain control over the body. But the legs refused to obey. Feet felt bound to the planks, knees would not bend, the center of gravity shifted on its own, holding the investigators in place. This was not hypnosis or paralysis. It was attraction, slow and relentless, radiating from the very structure of the vessel. Willpower dissolved, replaced by an alien rhythm. The deck beneath the boot ceased to be mere wood and tar. It acquired a strange resilience, responding to each step with a faint vibration. The movement traveled through the hull, sank into the ship's depths, bounced off bulkheads, and returned as a reinforced echo. It seemed as though a vast, slow heart beat beneath the flooring, setting the pace for the entire space. The vibration was not mechanical. It did not come from an engine, the wind, or the waves. It originated within, pulsing at intervals no stopwatch could measure. Each impact resonated in the chest, synchronizing with the natural heartbeat, forcing breath to adjust to a foreign tempo. The boundary between observer and object blurred, turning presence into assimilation. The planks breathed. The ship watched. The ship's logs lay open on the same tables, pages unmoving, ink unsmudged. Entries had been kept meticulously, the handwriting steady, free of haste or signs of deteriorating condition. Not a single line indicated sudden illness, fever, or madness. There were no mentions of anxiety, ill omens, strange dreams, or visions during the night watch. Duty reports recorded course, speed, weather, provisions consumption. Everything adhered to regulations, everything submitted to discipline. The people who kept these records did not foresee the end. They did not prepare for disappearance. They simply continued working until the moment came when the pen no longer touched paper. Order was not interrupted. It concluded. Only one sheet disrupted the flawless arrangement. It had been removed from the middle of the logbook carefully, without a single tear, without traces of haste or violence. The edges of the paper remained perfectly straight, as if cut by a sharp blade against a ruler, though no knives or scissors lay nearby, nor were there signs of outside interference. The binding holes retained their integrity, the threads did not loosen, the spine showed no deformation. The missing page held no annotations, bore no record impressions, left no dents on adjacent sheets. Its absence did not look like an attempt to conceal information. It resembled the extraction of a key component from a mechanism, after which the system continued to function but lost its original purpose. The omission became a question. The morning's silence brought no answers, only multiplied uncertainties. The coating on the deck did not vanish, the thermometer did not shift, food did not spoil, legs did not regain mobility. The vibration beneath the planks did not subside but intensified, penetrating bone, forcing muscles to tremble in unison. The logs remained silent, the missing page did not return, and the air grew heavier, turning breathing into labor. The ship did not react to human presence. It absorbed them, wove them into its rhythm, stripping away volition while leaving consciousness intact. Each passing hour confirmed one truth: the crew's disappearance was not a mistake. It was a transition. Those who remained aboard slowly became part of the same process, unaware as the boundaries of their own bodies began to blur. Investigators tried to record the changes, but pencils snapped and paper resisted the graphite's passage. Every symbol felt alien, an intrusion into foreign territory. Eyes scanned familiar objects, but perception warped. Walls seemed closer, ceilings pressed down, windows reflected not the outer sea but an inner void. Memory began to falter, erasing moments spent beyond the ship. Only the present remained in consciousness, stretched to its limit. The mind clung to rational explanations, but logic crumbled at the first touch of fact. The warmth in the mugs did not fade. The steam did not vanish. The deck did not rock. The world beyond the hull ceased to exist. Only the vessel remained, its occupants, and endless waiting. Dusk never fell, though the sun had long slipped below the horizon. Light inside the cabins did not shift in tone, remaining cold and lifeless. Lanterns required no oil, wicks did not blacken, flames did not flicker from drafts. The atmosphere resembled a sealed tomb where time had been preserved forever. The investigators realized their presence did not disrupt the balance. It completed it. Every breath, every turn of the head, every step on the companionway fitted into a mechanism set in motion long before their arrival. The ship did not demand a crew. It demanded presence. And as legs refused to obey reason, as fingers trembled and ears sealed shut, it became clear, they would not leave. They would become part of the records, part of the warmth, part of that very line ending on the deck. Chapter 4. A laboratory table claimed the center of the captain's quarters, transforming the cabin into an improvised research station. Glass flasks, microscopes, and reagents stood in precise rows, catching the pale light filtering through the portholes. The sample collected from the edge of the dark stains was placed beneath the lens, awaiting the familiar response of organic tissue. Instead, the liquid defied every known classification. Under magnification, it revealed no cells, no membranes, no standard protein chains. A crystalline lattice emerged, interwoven with mineral suspensions and an unknown organic compound. No manual, no medical encyclopedia contained a description of such a substance. It did not clot, did not oxidize, did not react with acids. Observation confirmed the impossible, the fluid did not belong to a human. It belonged to something else, existing beyond terrestrial biology. The ship's log was open to the final coordinate entry. The ink lay even, the numerals adhered to navigational standards, the course charted across open waters. Yet the depth calculations clashed directly with reality. The recorded latitude and longitude pointed to a region where the seabed dropped over 4,000 meters. The vessel, however, drifted in a narrow strait where the sounding lead measured no more than 50 fathoms beneath the keel. No submerged mountains, no hidden reefs, no topographical anomalies. The chart and the instrument depicted separate worlds. The space containing the ship refused to align with the crew's geographical records. It was as though the route had been plotted for another ocean, a different frame of reference where distance and depth obeyed unknown laws. The outer world gradually faded, yielding to complete internal isolation. The sky sealed under a solid gray veil, devoid of clouds, breaks, or hints of dawn. The air froze into a motionless mass, carrying neither salt freshness nor moisture. The wind died completely, flags on the masts hung limp, untouched by the slightest tremor. Gulls that typically trailed vessels in coastal waters vanished from the horizon, leaving neither silhouettes nor cries. The sea turned into a heavy, glassy surface reflecting the leaden canopy. Waves, tides, surf, and motion were entirely absent. The ocean stood still, as if awaiting a signal to awaken, or having already ceased to belong to the living world. The boundary between water and sky blurred, creating the sensation of an enclosed space where neither up nor down existed. Each step on the wooden companionway returned a hollow, prolonged echo that refused to fade against the bulkheads. Sound bounced off the planks, sank into the holds, and came back amplified, conjuring unseen companions. Breathing grew unnaturally deep, lungs expanding to draw more air than the body required. It seemed the oxygen within the hull possessed a different density, seeping into the blood slowly, lingering in the tissues. Dizziness followed the unfamiliar rhythm, thoughts slowed, visual focus blurred. The investigators moved carefully, attempting to preserve the acoustic balance, yet every rustle of boots, every creak of leather against wood multiplied, filling the air with foreign voices. Solitude gave way to a quiet dread that the surrounding space had long ceased to be empty. The ceramic mugs on the tables refused to alter their state. Warmth radiated from them in a steady, unbroken stream, undiminished by the approaching evening. Steam rose in vertical columns, never deviating by a single degree, never dissipating into the cabin air, never condensing on the walls. The liquid inside neither diminished in volume, nor changed color, nor cooled. Earthly physics ceased to apply here. Heat did not transfer to surrounding objects, did not warm the air, did not evaporate. It existed autonomously, as if sealed within an invisible sphere maintaining a constant temperature. Attempts to measure thermal output with instruments yielded zero readings beyond the mug's immediate radius, yet sensors placed directly against the porcelain registered a stable value. The warmth was not residual. It was active, self-sustaining, endless. The perception of time began to fracture, losing its linear sequence. Seconds stretched into minutes, hours slipped by unnoticed, yet the hands on the mechanisms moved in discord. In one cabin, a chronometer tracked morning hours, in another it pointed to deep night, in a third it froze at noon, refusing to advance. The mechanisms were undamaged, springs wound tight, gears engaged, but each instrument operated on its own rhythm. Attempts to synchronize them failed. Immediately after adjustment, the hands diverged, drifting in opposite directions. The investigators lost count of days, unable to determine how many hours had passed since boarding. Memory erased the boundary between past and present, leaving only a continuous now. Time ceased to be a measure. It became an environment. The fear that accompanied those who first stepped aboard gradually surrendered to heavy numbness. Adrenaline no longer flooded the bloodstream, heartbeats evened out, breathing slowed, muscles relaxed without conscious command. The threat ceased to register as external, transforming into an internal condition accepted as natural. The mind stopped resisting the anomalies, stopped searching for explanations, stopped forming hypotheses. The crew's disappearance no longer seemed like a disaster or a crime. It appeared as a natural conclusion, a logical end to a process that began long before rescue boats approached. They had not fled. They had dissolved, merging into the ship's structure, becoming part of its rhythm, its warmth, its silence. The numbness was not paralysis. It was acceptance. The skin took on a pale hue, losing its usual resilience yet never turning cold. The pulse slowed, matching the rhythm of vibrations rising from the deck planks. Muscles did not tense during movement, the body glided smoothly, without exertion, as if gravity inside the hull had weakened. Eyes stopped blinking at their usual rate, gaze fixed on objects without shifting. Consciousness operated in the background, processing information stripped of emotional weight. Notes in the journals were taken mechanically, handwriting grew uniform, devoid of individual traits, as if the hand moved by inertia. Thoughts flowed slowly, neither colliding nor intersecting, forming a steady current. Fear vanished not because danger passed. It vanished because danger ceased to be separate. It became part of the environment. The specimen under the microscope continued to shift, ignoring external stimuli while reconstructing its internal structure. Crystalline filaments wove tighter, mineral suspensions settled into fresh patterns resembling maps of unknown coastlines. The organic compound pulsed at the exact frequency of the vibrations beneath their boots. The connection between the fluid on the deck and the space inside the vessel became undeniable. The blood was not the mark of injury. It was a seed left to take root. It did not signal death. It signaled transformation. The investigators realized their own biological processes were beginning to synchronize with the substance. Heartbeats adjusted to the rhythm of the flasks, breathing aligned with the rise of steam, thoughts ordered themselves according to the architecture of an invisible pattern. The air in the cabins grew heavy but not suffocating. It saturated with invisible particles, passing through respiratory tracts, settling on membranes, embedding into cells. The porthole windows no longer revealed the outside world. The glass dulled, reflecting only internal illumination, even, cold, and sourceless. Straits and coordinates lost all meaning. The ship did not sail upon water. It rested at a point where space and time had fused into a single substance. Clocks continued to display different readings, yet this no longer provoked concern. Steam above the mugs rose endlessly. Warmth persisted without loss. Marks on the deck did not fade, did not dry, did not dull. They remained fresh, ready to continue. Numbness claimed the investigators completely, leaving no room for panic or retreat. Movements grew fluid, gazes calm, breathing measured. They were no longer strangers on a foreign vessel. They had become components of its mechanism, links in a chain sustaining permanence. Analysis confirmed the impossible: the blood did not belong to a human. The coordinates pointed to non-existent depths. Clocks refused to synchronize. Yet none of these anomalies seemed like errors anymore. They formed a single system, functioning flawlessly, without interruption, without purpose beyond existence. The ship did not await rescue. It awaited the completion of a cycle. And those who stepped aboard slowly, irreversibly, integrated into that cycle, becoming part of the frozen sea, the endless steam, and the warm mug that would never cool. The fifth day of examination brought final understanding. The vessel did not move across the water surface, despite the visible motion of waves beyond the hull. Crests rolled past the plating, foam broke against the metal, yet the body remained absolutely stationary relative to the seabed. The illusion of drift was sustained only by the external movement of the elements, while the platform itself froze in a point where space lost inertia. Observation of the horizon confirmed the paradox. The shore did not approach, did not recede, and did not change outline. The ship did not sail. It hung in a frozen coordinate, ignoring currents, tides, and water resistance. Deck boards yielded no sounds. The familiar creaking accompanying any sea vessel in motion was entirely absent. Even heavy steps did not make the wood respond with vibration. The wind walking over the waves did not touch the rigging. Ropes hung as dead loops, blocks did not turn, masts did not tremble. The air around the tackle seemed denser than usual, forming an invisible dome cutting off external influences. The atmosphere on board existed in isolation, not obeying meteorological laws. Silence became not just an absence of noise, but a physical substance pressing on eardrums. Heat radiating from the ceramic vessels ceased to be perceived as a residual phenomenon. Instruments placed inside the mugs registered stable heating, not dropping by a single degree. The source was not in the liquid, but in the material structure itself. Metal rings, rims, the inner surface of the clay radiated energy continuously. The drink maintained temperature solely through contact with this surface. As though the tableware itself generated heat, like a miniature furnace built into every household item. Heating did not dissipate into space but concentrated at the contact boundary. On that same spot where the dark line had previously ended, a new track emerged. It went in the opposite direction, crossing the former path at an acute angle. Drops moved not toward the gangway, not toward the boats, but toward a massive iron hatch, welded shut. The metal surface had no rust, hinges, or locks. It seemed the plate had grown from the deck as a single piece, leaving no gaps for air penetration. Tracks approached it, leaving a thin imprint on the steel that did not wipe away with touch. Liquid was drawn into the pores, vanishing without residue. The hatch metal bore no signs of welding, rivets, or factory stamps. It resembled an organic structure frozen in the shape of a geometric plate. Touching the surface left no sensation of cold or roughness. Fingers slipped over the material, meeting resistance similar to dense fabric stretched over a void. Hinges were absent, locks were absent, tool marks were absent. The opening opened itself, reacting to approach, like a door recognizing a guest. Air rushing from the gap carried no smell of dampness or metal. It smelled of ozone, warm earth, and something elusive familiar, reminiscent of childhood. The hatch yielded without resistance. Metal moved aside, making no screech, opening a passage to lower levels. Inside were no usual holds, bulkheads, or cargo nets. Space went down a smooth cylinder, walls shining with a matte gleam. Air filling the cavity did not match pressure calculations. It did not thicken with depth, did not become heavier, did not change density. Sensors showed zero deviations, though the depth of space exceeded several tens of meters. Breathing was not hindered, but a strange lightness was felt, lacking oxygen saturation. Descent happened without echo. Steps returned no sound, voices reflected off no walls. The smooth surface absorbed any vibrations, turning movement into silent gliding. Inside were no mechanisms, anchor chains, ballast, or supplies. Only void, bounded by perfect geometry. Light penetrated from above but left no shadows. It evenly filled the volume, having no visible source, creating no glare or darkening. Walls reflected rays so that direction disappeared, leaving only homogeneous radiance. Space seemed turned inside out. Realization came slowly, penetrating through protective barriers of the mind. The crew had not left the ship in panic. People did not lower boats, did not seek salvation, did not try to escape threat. The ship was not abandoned. It absorbed them. Every molecule of body, every breath, every track on deck dissolved into the whole structure, turning into part of a single organism. Wood, metal, fabric, air all became memory carriers, storing imprints of those who once breathed this space. Deck was not a standing place. It was skin. Memory of the crew was not erased but transformed. Names written in ship books turned into vibrations transmitted along the hull. Faces reflected in porthole glass became patterns on lower-tier walls. Every gesture, every word, every decision of sailors was absorbed into ship structure, turning into part of its rhythm. The ship did not kill. It preserved. It saved moments, not allowing them to dissolve in time flow. Crew did not perish in storm. They passed into a state of rest, becoming foundation on which the whole construction held. Movement below obeyed invisible attraction. Every step was directed not by will of investigators but by hidden vector pointing inward. Legs did not resist, mind ceased evaluating route. View was drawn to center where shine became brighter and air warmer. Walls seemed closer with each meter of descent, but distance did not shrink linearly. Space compressed not geometrically but perceptually. Feeling of depth replaced by feeling of presence. Down led not by fall but by plunge into core. Heat below ceased to be constant. It pulsed, setting rhythm synchronous with beating of own hearts. Each impact resonated in chest, forcing breathing to align with external tempo. Pulsation was not mechanical vibration. It felt like breath, like expansion and contraction of living tissue. Walls responded to steps with faint glow, intensifying light upon approach. It seemed space recognized presence, reacting with change in air density and radiation intensity. Center did not wait. It was already accepting. Pulsation strengthened link between present ones and space. Each breath drew light particles, each exhale returned heat back to walls. Boundaries between body and atmosphere erased, turning investigators into energy conductors. Muscles did not tense, joints did not crack, skin did not cover with sweat. Organism adapted to new conditions instantly, disabling defense mechanisms, replacing them with acceptance. Consciousness did not resist process. It observed, fixed, remembered. Fear vanished not because danger passed. It vanished because threat ceased to be external. It became internal harmony. Time in lower tier lost residual signs of linearity. Watches on belts stopped simultaneously, hands froze without visible cause. Memories of outside world faded, replaced by images of smooth walls and even light. Thoughts flowed slowly, requiring no formulations, generating no questions. Logic yielded to intuitive understanding of structure. Ship was not mechanism. It was vessel intended for preserving moment. Crew did not disappear. They passed into other state, becoming part of pulsing core. Investigators felt how their own boundaries blurred. Shine on walls changed intensity, reacting to heartbeats. Upon pulse acceleration light became brighter, upon slowing softer. Space synchronized with physiology, adjusting vibration frequency to breath rhythm. It seemed ship studied new inhabitants, scanning their reactions, building into existing network. None of systems worked on electricity, steam, or fuel. Energy source was inside structure itself, generating heat, light, and motion by unknown principle. Mechanism required no maintenance. It required presence. Air became denser but did not press. It enveloped, penetrated pores, replacing usual medium with another substance. Breathing required no effort, heartbeat slowed, matching pulse rhythm. Skin ceased feeling cold, muscles relaxed, disappearing into state of rest. Each breath drew not oxygen but atmosphere of ship itself, building into its cycle. Walls reflected not faces but silhouettes, detailless, merging with general background. Space did not accept strangers. It recognized its own. And those who descended below gradually became part of this recognition. Tracks on deck leading to hatch began to glow dull shade matching color of radiation below. Liquid did not dry, absorb, or vanish. It turned into conductor linking upper tier with core. Each step of investigators left barely noticeable glow on floor, instantly absorbed by smooth surface. Cycle closed. Entry required no key, descent no strength, presence no proof. Ship simply continued work started many years ago. Heat pulsed. Light did not fade. Air waited. Cycle approached completion. Upper tier quieted, lower tier filled with even hum merging with pulse beat. Tracks on deck no longer looked like remnants of past. They became signposts leading to center. Air in hatch ceased to seem void. It felt like filled space saturated with memory, heat, and time. Ship was not abandoned. It was preserved in moment of transition. And those who boarded slowly dissolved in this moment, becoming part of frozen ocean, endless steam, and pulsing heart underboards. Fifth day ended without sunset. Sky behind portholes remained gray, sea lay motionless, waves froze in moment before falling. Night did not fall inside ship. Shine in lower tier did not change intensity, keeping even cold shade. Investigators no longer tried to measure, write, or explain. They stood at edge of cylinder, feeling attraction strengthen, legs becoming lighter, consciousness shifting to observation mode. Ship was not left. It absorbed. And now turn came to those who came to look. Step down was not fall. It was return. The sixth day arrived without dawn. The sky did not lighten, remaining covered by a dense gray veil blocking every sun ray. The sea lay motionless, as if covered by a thick layer of lead, waves frozen in the moment before falling, not reaching the shore. The horizon blurred, merging with the water into a single mass without boundaries. Air inside the hull grew heavy, saturated with static electricity tickling the skin and making hair stand on end. Investigators understood time ceased to exist in the usual sense. Morning did not come. It simply continued, stretching into infinity, stripping hope for cycle change. Steam above the mugs did not change direction, rising vertically upward, ignoring any laws of physics and gravity. Silence became absolute, swallowing even the sound of own heartbeat, turning it into a dull thud inside the skull. It seemed sound stopped spreading in air, remaining locked in the source. Every breath required effort, as if oxygen became viscous like syrup. Atmosphere pressed on the chest, reminding of depth immersion, though the ship was on the surface. Feeling of isolation reached peak, cutting off connection with outside world completely. People who entered aboard found no exit. Cabin doors led to the same rooms they had left minutes before. Ladders returned to the same deck, regardless of moving down or up. Steps did not approach the shore, though the horizon seemed close, reachable by hand. Space closed into a ring, excluding possibility of escape or salvation. Every turn of the handle led to the same result, confirming route closure. Latches opened, but behind them lay the same bulkhead, the same smell, the same light. The ship did not allow leaving. It held those who crossed the line inside its organism, digesting their presence. Attempts to resist vanished, yielding to fatal acceptance of the inevitable. Thoughts flowed slowly, generating no evacuation plans. Self-preservation instinct dulled, replaced by curiosity toward the occurring anomaly. Body stopped signaling danger, perceiving the trap as natural habitat. Gravity inside rooms changed, making movement smooth, almost weightless. Will belong to the vessel. In one of the cups a new crack appeared, thin as a hair, crossing the white glaze diagonally. Liquid did not spill, did not flow out, left no trace on the wooden table. Instead the drink surface changed physical properties, becoming absolutely mirror-like. It reflected not the face of the leaning investigator, tired and pale. On the dark gloss emerged clear outlines of those who remained outside, at a safe distance. Silhouettes of rescue vessels, figures of people on another ship deck, watching through binoculars with worry. Liquid showed the outside world, inaccessible to those inside the hull. Boundary between worlds thin to the thickness of liquid in the porcelain wall. One could see hand movements, mouths opening in screams, but sound did not pass through the surface. This was a silent movie projected onto coffee. Reflection did not distort from steam, remaining crystal clear. Investigators understood they became exhibits, displayed for those outside. Division became final. They saw rescuers, but rescuers did not see their true faces. Blood on the boards began moving slowly, violating laws of gravity and substance viscosity. Dark drops crawled along the wood, gathering into a complex, intricate pattern. Lines crossed at acute angles, forming contours resembling a map of a non-existent sea. Coastlines matched no known geographical map of the world. Depths were marked with symbols unintelligible to human mind, glowing with weak phosphorescent light. Pattern pulsed in time with heartbeats of those present, creating visual link between people and deck. It seemed the deck drew a path that could not be walked by feet, only by consciousness. Map led not to land, not to port, but inside the structure of the ship itself. It pointed to the center, where heat was maximal, where pulsation became life rhythm. Lines converged on the point where the last untouched mug stood. This was the collection point, focus point of all ship energy. Blood was not evidence of death. It was ink with which new history of presence was written. Map ended where reading of these lines began. The ship hull did not belong to the 1870s. Build time lost meaning in this closed space where past and present merged. Wood did not age, metal did not rust, fabric did not decay under time influence. It belonged to everyone who approached it, who looked at it with hope or fear. Every glance left on the planking became part of its history, built into fiber structure. Every breath built into ventilation, becoming part of the air. Ship was not an object of the past. It was a mechanism of the present, existing outside chronology and calendars. It consumed attention, turning observers into event participants, into co-authors of the legend. Belonging was defined not by ownership rights, not by documents in the cabin, but by fact of presence. Heat in the mugs proved not a drink, not a result of water boiling on fire. It was memory fixed in the material. It held those seeking the answer, not letting consciousness cool, not letting them forget what was seen. Energy came not from fire, but from fixed moments of crew life. Every ungulped sip was preserved in porcelain structure forever. Heat was preservative for souls stuck between states of being and non-being. It did not let forget, did not let leave, did not let die fully. Mugs became accumulators of human emotions, charged with fear and hope of vanished people. Last step did not lead to salvation from anomaly. It led to realization that ship did not wait for crew to manage mechanisms. Sailors were not the goal of this complex device. They became just first material, first layer of memory for accumulation. The vessel waited for witnesses. Those who would come, see, and remember, passing knowledge further. Without witnesses, ship existence lost meaning, anomaly collapsed without observer. Without observer, phenomenon could not manifest fully in reality. Investigators realized their role was not in saving cargo or finding disappearance causes. Their role was to become part of the proof. And now the cup stands before whoever reads these lines. Steam rises evenly, not dissipating in the room air. Temperature has not dropped for eternity. Text on screen became that very log. Reader felt the smell. Cup stands on table. Someone just left. And waits for you to step.